Look at a photograph of your mother in 1956, and you will think what everyone thinks. She was so much smaller then. She probably was, a little. But that is not the whole reason the photograph reads the way it does. She was dressed by a system that had spent 50 years learning how a body is read across a room. All of it came down to one idea you cannot unsee. The eye finds the narrowest point on a body and measures everything else against it. Give the eye somewhere to land, move it, sharpen it. That was the entire trade, and every trick on this list is a version of it. Number 7 is the most effective thing on this list, and almost every modern wardrobe has abandoned it. Number 1 is why she never stood in a fitting room feeling like the problem. Let's start at 12. Number 12. The belt went where she was narrowest, not where the loops were. Stand in front of a mirror and run your hands down your sides. There's a point where your rib cage ends and before your hip begins, where the body pulls. On most women, it sits higher than they expect, usually about an inch above the navel, sometimes 2. That is the narrowest point, and in 1955, that is where the belt went. Every time. Not at the hip, not at the low waist where the trousers happened to sit, not wherever the loops had been sewn. Because the belt is an instruction. It tells the eye this is the middle of her. Put it low and the eye reads the widest part of the torso as the waist. Put it at the true narrowest point, and everything above and below reads as taper. It is the single cheapest change on this list. It takes 4 seconds and costs nothing, and most women watching this are currently wearing a belt an inch and a half too low. Number 11, she put a line down the middle of herself. Look at any dress from the period and you will find something running vertically down the front. A row of buttons, a placket, a center seam, a knife pleat, a row of covered buttons that did not open anything at all and existed purely as decoration. None of that was decorative. The eye follows a line. Give it a vertical and it travels up and down and it reads the body as tall. Give it nothing and it drifts sideways and it reads the body as wide. This is the same reason a striped awning looks tall and a plain one looks squat. The corollary is the part people forget. She avoided strong horizontals across the widest part of her. No wide contrasting waistband sitting at the hip, no horizontal seam across the bust, no belt in a color that shouted, worn at the wrong height, one vertical, no competing horizontal. That is the whole of number 11. Number 10, her shoes were the color of her legs, nude pumps in a shade close to her own skin, worn with stockings in a shade close to her own skin. The reason is purely mechanical. The eye stops traveling at a color change. A dark shoe against a bare leg puts a hard stop at the ankle, and the leg ends there. Visually, it becomes a shorter leg, and a shorter leg makes the whole figure read heavier. Match the shoe to the leg and the eye keeps going. The line runs unbroken, from hem to floor. The same logic ran the other way for a pointed toe, which added a half an inch of visual leg for nothing. I tried this on an ordinary Tuesday with 2 pairs of shoes and the same skirt, standing in front of the same mirror. I had read about it for years and assumed the effect was overstated. It was not. It was the most obvious thing in the room. Number 9. The sleeve stopped at the narrowest part of her arm, 3/4 length. It was everywhere, and it was not a stylistic accident. Run your hand down your own arm. It is widest at the upper arm, narrows through the elbow, and reaches its narrowest point somewhere in the lower forearm before the wrist. A sleeve that ends there exposes the slimmest section and hides the widest one. A sleeve that ends at the elbow does the opposite. It cuts the arm at its bulkiest visible point and leaves the eye there. The same rule ran everywhere on the body once you know to look for it. Skirts hit at the narrowest part of the calf, just below the widest curve, never at the middle of it. Neckline stopped where the collarbone showed. Every hem on her body was placed at a narrow point. Not one of them was placed at a wide one. If you have ever looked at an old photograph and wondered how she did that, subscribe. What comes next is the one idea underneath every trick on this list, and once you have it, you will not need the list. Here is the principle underneath everything on this list, and it is not about clothes at all. It is about how looking works. When you see a shape, you do not measure it, you compare it. The eye finds a reference. the tightest, most defined part of the outline, and reads everything else in relation to that. It is why a vase with a pinched neck looks elegant and the same vase without one looks like a jar. Nothing changed about the volume. What changed is whether the eye had somewhere to anchor. A body is read the same way across a room in under a second by someone who is not thinking about it at all. So the 1950s system did three things in order. It found the narrowest point, not a theoretical one, hers, wherever it happened to sit, which is why nothing was bought without being tried on and marked. It made that point unmissable. Belt, seam, contrast, the nip of a jacket. It removed every competing signal. No horizontal cutting across the widest part. No color change interrupting a long line. No hem landing on a curve. That is it. That is the whole method, and it works on any body of any size, because every body has a narrowest point. Whatever else was true about what she weighed, she knew where her own waist was. Most of us have never once gone looking for ours. None of this was written down anywhere. It passed from a mother to a daughter in a fitting room, and when that stopped happening, it went with her. The forgotten 1950s Feminine Routine Manual is my attempt to put it back on paper. 150 pages of the habits, the routines, and the daily economy of a woman who ran a home the way ours often don't run. It's at nostalgiawomen.com. I won't mention it again. Number 8. The VEE. Almost every neckline she owned made a downward point, a V-neck, a surplice wrap, a shawl collar crossing over, an open shirt collar with the top two buttons undone, a long strand of beads hanging in a narrow loop. A round neckline draws a horizontal across the top of the chest and makes the shoulders and bust read as one wide block. A V breaks that block and starts the vertical line from number 11 at the very top of the body. It also does something to the neck. The eye reads the exposed skin as a continuation of the neck itself, so the neck reads longer, and a longer neck makes the head read smaller against the shoulders, which is most of what elegant means when people use the word about old photographs and cannot say why. The beads were doing the same job as the neckline. That is why they were long. A choker sat horizontally and cut the neck in half. Number 7. One color, top to bottom. The single most effective thing on this list, and the one modern wardrobes have almost entirely abandoned. A dress in one color or a skirt and top in the same color produces one continuous shape with no interruption anywhere. The eye travels the whole length of it in one movement and reads one long form. Break that column with a contrasting waistband, a different colored top, a belt that shouts, and you have made two shorter shapes stacked on each other. Two short shapes always read wider than one long one, no matter what the shapes are. This is also why the contrast went to the narrow places and never the wide ones. A bright scarf at the throat, a brooch at the shoulder, a belt in the same family as the dress, not a different color entirely. Interest at the top, uninterrupted line below. The modern instinct is the reverse, a plain top and a statement bottom. That is precisely backwards. Number 6, she put the dark where she was widest. Doris was 41, worked at a bank in Dayton, and owned 4 dresses she rotated across a working week. 3 came out of the Sears catalog and 1 from Montgomery Ward. 2 of them were navy on the bottom and something lighter above, a pale blue, a soft gray. That was not an accident of what was available. Dark colors absorb light, which means the eye reads less shape and less volume. Light colors reflect it and read as more. So the rule was simple, and she never had to think about it. Dark where she was widest, light where she wanted the eye to stop. For most women, that meant a darker skirt and a lighter blouse. For a woman carrying weight higher, it ran the other way, and she knew that too. The modern version of this advice has been flattened into wear black, it's slimming, which misses the entire point. It was never about wearing dark. It was about where the dark went relative to her own shape. None of this was secret knowledge. It was ordinary, and it disappeared for 2 reasons that had nothing to do with women deciding they no longer cared. The first is that FIT stopped being a service. In 1958, the U.S. Department of Commerce published a standard called CS 21558, body measurements for the sizing of women's ready-to-wear. For the first time, a size 12 was supposed to mean the same thing in every shop in America, but adopting it was voluntary. Manufacturers kept using their own internal measurements because their own measurements flattered their own customers. The standard was revised in 1970, made explicitly voluntary, and abandoned entirely in 1983. So the promise was made and then quietly withdrawn. A size stopped describing a body, and the thing that had bridged that gap, the alterations counter at the back of the store, where a woman was pinned and the garment was made to fit her, became an extra service, then an upcharge, then something most shops simply stopped offering. The second is stranger, and it starts with someone trying to help. In 1958, a DuPont chemist named Joseph Shivers was working on a problem. The heavy rubber threads in foundation garments were uncomfortable, and he wanted something lighter. He produced a fiber that could stretch 5 times its length and return. They called it Fiber K. You know it as Lycra. He solved the problem he was aiming at. He also solved a problem nobody had asked him to solve, because a fabric that stretches does not need to be cut accurately. Stretch made fit optional, and a garment that fits everybody has been shaped for nobody. It does not find your narrowest point, because it does not know where it is. It goes where your body already goes. That is what was lost, not discipline and not thinner women. The thing that was lost is that clothes used to be adjusted to the woman. Number 5, the shoulder was built. A defined shoulder, a set-in seam that sits exactly at the edge of the shoulder bone, sometimes with a small pad underneath. The reason is comparison again. A waist does not read as narrow on its own. It reads as narrow against something wider. Give the shoulders a clean, slightly extended line, and the same waist reads smaller without changing by a single inch. This is why the shoulder seam mattered so much, and why a jacket that fit anywhere else but not there was considered unwearable. A seam that falls off the edge of the shoulder makes the whole upper body slump, and the waist disappear into it. Check any jacket you own. Put it on and find where the seam lands. If it sits below the point of your shoulder, the jacket is doing the opposite of what you bought it for, and no amount of belting will fix it, because you have removed the wide reference the waist needed. Number 4, the fabric held the shape, not her. Cotton poplin, wool crepe, file, taffeta, heavy rayon, cloth with enough body to stand slightly away from the skin and hold a line of its own. That is the difference nobody names when they look at old photographs. The dress is holding its own shape. It is not lying against the body, reporting every detail underneath. It is describing a shape, and the shape it describes is the one it was cut to. This is also the honest part of the foundation garment story. I made a whole video about what women wore underneath, and it is on this channel if you want it. But the structure in those photographs is not coming only from what was under the dress. A great deal of it is coming from the dress. A modern jersey dress in the same size on the same woman reports. A wool crepe dress describes. There is something worth noticing in the fact that we replaced cloth that did the work with cloth that makes the body do it. Number 3, the hem was a decision, not a length. She did not wear midi or knee length. She wore the length that worked on her legs, and she found it by standing in front of a mirror and having someone pin it. The method was specific. The calf has a widest point and then narrows toward the ankle. A hem that lands on the widest point of the calf makes the leg read as its widest measurement. A hem that lands just below that point in the taper makes the leg read as the narrower measurement. That spot is different on every woman by an inch or two, which is exactly why a standard length cannot find it. Same principle as the sleeve in number 9, same principle as the belt in number 12. By this point in the list, you can predict it. Find the narrow, put the edge there. Number 2, nothing left the store the way it came. Doris did not own 4 dresses that fit her. She owned 4 dresses that had been made to fit her. There was a counter at the back of the store for exactly this. A woman with a tape measure round her neck, a cushion of pins on her wrist, and a stool you stood on while she worked round the hem with her mouth full of them. Sears did it. Montgomery Ward did it. The good department store downtown did it and did not charge for it. Everything got taken in at the waist. Sleeves got shortened. Hems got set to her. Shoulders got adjusted. It was expected, and a woman who bought a dress and wore it home unaltered was doing something slightly odd. This is the trick that makes the other 10 almost unnecessary, and it is the one we have most completely lost. We buy a garment and treat its dimensions as a verdict on the body inside it. She bought a garment and treated its dimensions as a rough draft. A tailor today will take in a waist for less than the price of a mediocre new dress. Almost nobody does it. Not because it is expensive, but because we stopped thinking of clothing as something adjustable at all. Every trick on this list is mechanical. Where the belt sits, where the hem lands, which direction the line runs. You could hand the whole thing to a stranger and they could apply it tomorrow morning without knowing anything about the 1950s. But there is a reason none of these women had to think about any of it. And it is not that they were more disciplined or more vain or better at clothes. It is that they were solving a completely different problem than the one we are solving. Number 1 is the shortest thing on this list. Number 1, she was adjusting the clothes. That is the whole of it. When something did not sit right, she did not conclude that there was a problem with her body. She concluded there was a problem with the garment and then she had it altered, or she moved the belt, or she found a different hem. The body was the fixed thing. The clothing was the variable. We inverted that completely and fairly recently. Now the garment is the fixed thing, cut to a size that means nothing, and the body is what has to meet it, which is why a fitting room can make a grown woman feel like she has failed an examination. Every trick on this list is downstream of that one sentence. She was never trying to change herself. She was trying to change the dress. Doris kept a small pincushion in her handbag for 30 years, not for repairs, but for the hem she would decide to move by half an inch after seeing herself in a shop window. Pick one from this list. The belt is the easiest and it costs nothing. Move it up 1.5 inches tomorrow morning and look again. Then come back and tell me in the comments which one you tried and what actually happened. I want to know whether it works as well on you as it did on her. I read everyone.